Welcome back, guys. We're going to talk about house hacking today in this video. I mentioned it before, but this strategy can be a fantastic strategy to get into real estate and really start building out a portfolio. What house hacking is purchasing a home as your primary residence and then moving out and keeping that home as a rental property and going and doing it again in another property, living there for a year, moving on. And by purchasing these homes and then keeping them instead of selling them and buying a new one, you just keep it and you start renting it out. You can start to drive cash flow and build yourself a pretty nice real estate portfolio. And it's a way to do it with lower down payment. So as I've mentioned before, you can go qualify for a conventional mortgage on a primary residence on homes up to a fourplex, up to a 4-unit property. And so you can get into a property that's already cash flowing money, already has tenants, and you go live in 1 unit, right? Let's say you do a fourplex, or you could do a single family home, duplex, triplex, fourplex. Let's say you do a fourplex. So you go put down 3%. You go live in one of the units for a year. You have the other 3 rented out. They essentially would be covering your rent, right? Their rental income is coming and covering your whole mortgage for the entire property. Okay. And then when in 12 months, you can go out and purchase another property and then fill that unit there where you were living, fill it with a tenant. And all of a sudden now you're cash flowing, right? Or close to it. Okay. And you can just keep going to do it again and again. Now, if you're putting only 3% down, obviously you're going to have a larger mortgage payment. And so depending on where you live, where you are, where the property is, how much rents are, maybe if you're living in it, maybe you're not positive cash flow. Maybe the rent isn't quite covering the whole mortgage while you're living there, but you're definitely going to have a reduced expense there, right? And so the goal would be at least to have that, but the goal would be to, when you move out, that the rent from the units covers your expense plus some, okay? And that is definitely possible. So you then rinse and repeat, okay? So you go through and you do another property, same thing. After a year, you move on. So the things to keep in mind are this. Again, you can qualify for a conventional mortgage as a primary residence on up to a 4-unit property. You can do a low down payment. You get a preferred interest rate because it's a primary residence instead of an investment property where they are going to charge you higher interest. So it's a primary residence, you get lower interest rates, generally speaking. You have to plan to live there for at least 12 months, okay, as a primary residence, or else you're not going to qualify for that type of mortgage. And then you can rinse and repeat. So I knew somebody a long time ago, and he, just a few years out of college, right? He was probably 2 or 3 years out of college. He and his brother had started doing this all while they were in college. And they had built up by that time. So he'd graduated and he'd been out for about 2 or 3 years. And they had like 6 properties already. Some of them, there was a duplex, and they were just renting them out, and they found properties in good areas, and they went in and bought them, and then they just house hacked and they moved. At that time, the requirement was a little bit longer. I think it was 24 months you had to live in. So you had to live there for 2 years. But between him and his brother, they built up quite a nice little real estate portfolio, and he was just continuing. So his rental income actually was covering most of his expenses at that point. So he was really, really close to cash flowing all his expenses. So it's a great way to go. I have another person that I know that they are working on their 3rd property in 2 years. So when we met, we started working together as a client of mine, and he purchased a property, lived there, hit the requirement, went and bought another one, started renting that out, right? And now he's hitting the year mark, and he is buying a 3rd property. He's going to rent out the 2nd, and so forth. And so in this scenario, you're not really buying your dream house necessarily, right? You're not necessarily buying a home that you want to live in long term. That's not the point. The point is you are using it for investment. And so the way you approach that purchase decision and the way you work the numbers is different. You can live anywhere for 12 months. Even if you don't want to live there long term, you can live anywhere as long as the numbers make sense. Okay. So house hacking is a fantastic way. It doesn't work for everybody. Everybody's situation is different, but if you're younger and you can be very mobile and you're okay with moving around, maybe even a young couple, maybe once you have kids that grow up and are getting older, maybe that becomes tired, right? You don't want to live in a fourplex unit anymore. But if you're young and you've got it in you, then it is a great strategy to get started and start building. Now, what do you do when you have, 8 units across a couple different properties? Well, at a certain point, you can go ahead and sell those and maybe roll that money into a bigger property. So you're not having to manage all these different properties. You build them up, you have like a little real estate portfolio, and then you sell them, you take the cash and you roll it in to fund the purchase of maybe a larger, maybe you buy a 10-unit apartment complex or a 20-unit apartment complex, okay? So you don't have to continually manage all those. And again, you can have property managers do a lot of that for you, but it's just kind of a way to snowball into real estate without having a lot of capital yourself, okay? It just takes some lifestyle adjustment for a little while, and then you can kind of be on your way. So that's house hacking. I love that strategy, and I've seen it used very effectively. So I hope that helps. We'll see you guys in the next video.
This strategy changed people's lives. It can change ours too.